G'day friends, Miloa here. We are diving deep into the brawler today, and Sape's gonna be walking us through how to tank on it. Sape, welcome and thanks.
Hello. Yeah, not diving deep into the red line of the brawler, but the blue, in particular. Um, just as a brief intro, basically, no other tanking class in the game provides anywhere near the amount of, especially offensive benefits to the group. But the way the brawler works in order to be able to do that has to be understood by the healers, the debuffers, by the entire group. It's not it's a very different play style than other tanking classes, and its weaknesses have to be accommodated for. Um, so I'm going to go into how to best optimize, or at least most situations. Um, Probably the least understood, and least most underutilized game class in the entire game. However, I am a firm believer that it is the absolute best tanking class. If you have just one tank and you can pull a fight off with it being a brawler. If you have a group that can do it, it makes things so much easier. And having a brawler in a raid, if you don't have a red one, and since they don't do that much damage, and um, they have basically all the same buffs that group buffs that blue does, it's best to have a blue brawler. So a lot of this is not going to make sense until I explain how things work together and synergize later on. So you may have to rewatch parts of the video or the entire video to really understand how things work together, but got to start somewhere. So basically, Brawler has a system of what's called Mettle that is similar to, in a lot of ways, like Focus for hunters, Fervor for champions, and so you have this this amount of metal, which does a variety of things and is critical to just like every element of everything that you do. Essentially, as you see, every 10 seconds you lose one, but you have a system just like Red Brawler does, of building and spending metal, and skills will. There are a huge number of variables that go into this, but the simple are the most straightforward ones. And this is assuming that you have the 6 set for DMK, or at least the 2 set for this purpose, because the 2 set bonus, as you can see there, Sinister Crossed, which is one of your setup attacks, which I'll get to shortly, reduces the metal cost of your next finisher by 2. Essentially what you are doing almost all the time is alternating setup, finisher, setup, finisher. And obviously with the at least 2 set DMK raid gear bonus, you are going to want to decrease the metal cost of your next finisher by 2. Sinister Cross is going to be what you use 80+% of the time as your setup skill. Setup skills add 2 to Mettle, and there is a trait that you should definitely spec all the way into battle-wise in yellow. 5 points, setup skills have a 25% chance to generate 1 bonus medal. So, like, that's critical. There are some other ways to build Mettle, but way more ways to use it. Um, so basically, I'll just show you here. There are 3 setup skills. Sinister Cross, which moderately increases threat. They all moderately increase threat. But it, as I said, reduces the metal cost of your next finisher, and it also has the increased, the additional benefit of when you use it before a finisher, depending on the type of the finisher, you get 2 tiers of what's called an inner strength buff. And that lasts 20, or with the trace read 23 seconds. And you see here, I used Mighty Upheaval and Strike Toward the Sky, which are the 2 heavy finishers, which increase, which give that. And so at tier 4 with the Tracery right there, innate strength, criticals mitigation, plus 11% and plus 3.3 duration. It's plus at tier 4 plus 2.775% of both mitigations for 23 seconds. And as long as you refresh it before by using one of the heavy skills, then it will stay at tier 4. Then you have, I'll just go on to the other innate strength buffs. You have 3 types of finishers. You have the heavies, which give the innate strength mitigations. You have balanced, which give parry chance. Okay. Okay, at tier 4, without the tracery, with the tracery, it's 11.1%, but at tier 4, from using balance finishers, you which are overhand smash and backhand, or not backhand, gut punch. And those are the only ones, or only 2. You can get up to 11.1 if you want to use that tracery, but it's really not worth it for the tiny extra parry chance. But still, 10% parry and keeping that up is significant. And then you have other finishers that are quick skills that, like backhand clout, knee strike, palm crusher, palm's hammer. Okay, all of these give more at tier 4 once again, 20% more threat, and with the tracery that goes up to 25%. So you want to keep your innate strength, your innate strength, all 3 of these buffs up at tier 4 at all times, meaning you're wanting to utilize basically all of your finishers. And Sinister Cross, in addition to reducing the metal cost of your next finisher by 2. If you have the 2 set bonuses I said before from the raid, it will give you 2 tiers of the innate strength buff. Whereas if you use one of the other setups skills first, extras hook or low strike, they will only give 1 tier of the finisher that follows of the buff. So in order to get up tier 4 of the 3 buffs as quickly as possible, you're going to want to use Sinister Cross and 2 heavies, 2 balanced, and 2 quicks. So 6 Sinister Crosses essentially. The other setup skills in blue, Dexterous Hook is very rarely used. It just causes more damage. It's like the go-to for red because plus 35% finisher skill damage. But it's really not that useful by comparison to the other 2. Low Strike is the other one, and if you just read the tooltip, it doesn't seem to be that useful. It just says that it'll restore a substantial amount of power. However, there's this amazing effect called vulnerability. And if you trait in yellow into vulnerability chance at 5 points, you'll get a 50% chance if you use low strike and then a finisher to put the vulnerable effect on the target or targets. Like if you use it before an AoE attack, then it has a 50% chance to put it on all of the targets. And what it does is, especially if you trait into the duration increase 3 points into lasting weakness, it increases vulnerable debuff to 30 seconds. And that is a plus 3% incoming damage debuff. So you can basically keep that up, especially in AoE situations, very easily just with low strike and then like monitoring, making sure that you refresh it before it falls off, because 3% incoming damage for just using a setup skill and spending a few points in traits is substantial, especially in AoE situations. So you're going to be using that one at the beginning as well to get up at the beginning of fights to get up vulnerable on your targets. But after it's up, then you want to immediately transition to Sinister Cross and basically just use Sinister Cross from then on out, except to refresh vulnerable from low strike. And if you really want to generate as much threat as possible and you have the metal to do it, then you can use Dexterous Hook as well. But yeah, those are going to be your main 2. So, all right, let's dive into what other ways that you increase metal, because the finishers all cost 3 metal to use, and as well as a variety of your skills that are buffs or defensive skills for yourself. Basically everything except for finishers costs metal, excluding these 2 skills, Quick Feint, and I will tooltip them and Get Serious. Okay, they both have proper traceries. Which I'll just pull up allies as well. All right, so quick feint with the tracery that is right here. Okay, so minus 11-second cooldown, it gets down to 29 seconds, and if you have traded into Clever Feint and also have in blue, which I'm showing here, 5 points, and also have the tracery, then as you see, for 10 seconds, in addition to the 10% melee damage that it provides, you get a plus 7.2% evade chance for those 10 seconds. And it immediately adds 6 to metal. It's like your biggest give me metal now skill, essentially. And then there is, like, I'll just use finishers to get rid of the metal. Okay, then there's Get Serious, which has a 30-second cooldown, and it you gain a damage buff for 6 seconds, but it's not really, these skills are, the damage is insignificant compared to the metal generation. And it generates 6 metal, 1 every second, for 6 seconds. And then other ways to generate metal are with your taunts. And Brawler has a very, very unique taunt system that's very different from all other tanking classes, which I will get into in a little while. But just know that both of your taunts immediately generate 3 metal, if you're in blue, obviously. But beyond that, and one of your defensive skills, which will give you 1 metal every 4 seconds for 30 seconds, you're relying on setup skills to balance out the metal cost of all of your finishers. And for instance, see here, Joy of Battle damage, which is one of your defensive skills, costs 3 metal. The and Joy of Battle heal, same thing. And so you are constantly trying to manage metal to where you have as much of it as possible, especially if you have the especially because of this skill that is a toggle skill called Metal Shield. And with the 4-set bonus from the raid gear, this is one of the most powerful set bonuses in the game. While Metal Shield is active, your melee attacks will restore 2% of your morale, and that is on a 0.5-second cooldown. So you can just here, I'll demonstrate. So whenever you have it toggled on, it successful attacks against you remove 2 metal. But when you have it on, then you take 13.3% with the tracery, which you should have, less damage. And on harmful attacks with the 4-set bonus, on all of your attacks, restore 2% of your maximum morale with the cooldown of 0.5 seconds. So you can literally, just by using your setup and finisher skills, regenerate your own health at 4% per second. Like, you can keep yourself up as long as you have the metal to sustain it, because whenever You run out of metal, and it falls off. You should not use this in situations where there are more than 2 enemies attacking you, but you should always use it on single target. And especially if you have the 4-set bonus, you can just look at how much healing is being done. It's 11k, 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 11k. That's just from Metal Shield and the 4-set bonus. However, if I'm getting attacked by, say, 4 enemies, every single time that I'm hit by any of them, I lose 2 metal. And so I'm not going to be able to use finishers. I'm not going to be able to, you have to toggle it off and know when to toggle it on and when off. And if you forget that, like if you go into a single target boss fight, and of course you toggle it on, and then afterwards you're going into trash and you get to toggle it off, then you're going to quickly find yourself in trouble and not able to use your finishers and hold aggro on the enemies, and yeah, your group won't like you very much. So it's a careful balance. There's one other critical element to metal generation that most blue brawlers don't use, but I find is incredibly useful for the big oh you know what situations where you still need metal shield to be toggled in order to stay alive, basically. And so you can trait just 1 point into efficient strikes, and even though it has a 3-minute cooldown, though not technically, I'll get into how you can shorten that briefly, but for 20 seconds, metal cost for spender skills is reduced by 1. So that can allow you to have metal shield toggled and still be using your other skills and holding things and regenerating health, or those situations where you have to keep yourself alive, and but you don't have to trade into that. Okay, moving on. So the way that you generate aggro is through your setups and finishers, of course. It's not like you don't have nearly as many skills that generate massive amounts of aggro or taunts that will allow you to be able to hold everything like Guardian and Captain can pretty easily. You don't have self heals very much unless you have Metal Shield toggled on that generates aggro for you either. So I'm sure if you've played with a subpar or just average even blue brawler in a group before, you've seen that in general they struggle a lot on AoE situations if they don't know what they're doing, because there are only 3 AoE abilities we have, and they all have short radiuses. 2 of them are 7 meters and only in front of like a 180 frontal, and max targets with the trait max targets 3 points into it. Strike toward the sky, 7-meter range, max targets 7-meter radius, and cooldown of 10 seconds. Cannon Clout, 7-meter range, max targets of 10 with the tracery that I highly recommend you get. backhand clout targets and damage, and that's largely because you want on big trash pools to be able to use low strike and then backhand clout and get vulnerable up on as many targets as possible. And then Mighty Upheaval, which is a 360 with 8 max targets, 10-meter radius, and it will also, with tracery, that is on my other LI, one second, will have an 83% chance to apply to all of enemies that it hits a 2-second knockdown. In addition to that, it increases threat over time for 9 seconds. Like, it doesn't apply initial threat, but for the next 9 seconds, it generates more threat than any other skill does initially. Think of it as like a Bastion of Light for Guardian, but to a much lesser degree. And it will also knock down majority of the enemies, especially if you have the tracery right here, plus 33% knockdown chance, and allow you to, at that point, generate more threat by using your other AoE skills before the enemies have a chance, if the DPS is opening up on them, to run away and force you to use your AoE taunt. And this is, I guess, where I'll transition into the taunts. Brawler only has 2 taunts, and one of them, the AoE one, is both incredibly powerful and incredibly weak in a few different ways. So it can be reduced to 29 seconds, which is still a long time, especially considering you only have 2 taunts and this is your only AoE one. And it only has a 12.2 meter range, and a radius of 12 meters, and max targets of 10. And however, it is immediate. Well, almost immediate. Like, there's a delay, an animation for most taunts in the game, including the single target taunt for Brawler, Brash Invitation. Like, if you watch, it takes about a second to go off, whereas the AoE one, much quicker. So that's one benefit to it. Another is that it is the only AoE forced attack, so taunt essentially, that lasts 10 seconds, excluding Guardian's challenge with tracery, and but so it will make everything that it hits stick to you for 10 seconds. And one of the great things about Brawler's taunts, even though in many ways they are terrible, they also have great benefits as well. And one of them is that when you use them for 9 seconds, much like Mighty Upheaval, increases threat over time. So unlike other tanking classes, taunts, while the forced attack is active, they have to continue generating more threat before it expires than the rest of the group in order to hold the enemy. But whenever you use one of your taunts, the single target 1 brash invitation, only a 5-second force attack, but it also gives that 9-second increased threat over time. During at 9 seconds, you do more threat, essentially just passively. So it's much harder, basically, once the force attack expires, for you to lose aggro. However, you cannot build much aggro very quickly, and or essentially, especially in AoE situations, you have to run in and like, use a setup and then finisher, setup, and then long finisher. All right. And if you can do that and then taunt, and the group gives you, enough time to at least get off 2 of your AoEs, then your taunt will copy your own threat. But if the group like just opens up from the very beginning, and especially if you're not even like at the mobs yet, then you may have to use come at me at the very beginning. And that can cause massive problems, especially if the mobs are too spread out to be hit by idea people. And well, or if you're not able to turn and face them and use the other 2 AoE skills that are only frontals. So whenever you're playing with the Brawler Tank, you need to recognize that they need to get off a few attacks first in order to sustain, and especially in AoE situations, aggro. Do not open up with Nature's Fury or, Burn Hot and Heartseeker, and I give them just a little bit of time before you use your big skills, essentially, if you're a class that does that. So there is a great way to decrease the incredibly long cooldown of 29 seconds of Come At Me, the AoE taunt, but it requires the 2 set Ikerbani instances, the buckle and hearing. And what it does is finisher skills will reduce the cooldown of Come At Me by 1 second, and the effect has a 2-second cooldown, and then it also just gives seconds. But still, that's a long time to wait whenever you only have 2 taunts, and one of them is single target. And it at least has a long range, but you don't have any long range skills except for one, which is hurl object. And if, for instance, someone pulls from range and is not stacked with the group, and you're not able to use your skills to get aggro back, and you taunt with Brash Invitation, even if you throw hurl object, if they continue attacking that enemy as it's leaving your range, you've either got to chase it and hit it with melee skills, and obviously this causes problems because the tank generally doesn't want to you know run away from the boss or run through the group, etc. And so because you have like only one not very threat generating range skill, as soon as the force attack duration expires, if they are still opening up on it on the mob, you're probably not going to be able to hold it, especially if this is happening with multiple mobs. Like if people are not following target assist and are pulling multiples away from you, you're going to have to chase them if you don't have come at me available. And so this is part of the reason why you see very few brawler tanks in like pickup groups. It's if you don't know how to play with the brawler tank, if the group doesn't, it can be insanely frustrating to try to maintain aggro because it we don't have Bastion of Light and War Chant. We don't have Captain's 40-meter AoE radius taunt. We don't have Bear's ability to like just hold everything and also like attack from range. They have a few ranged attacks that pull things back, and all of those classes have more taunts than we do as well. So you have to factor that in whenever you're playing with a brawler, especially in AoE situations. As far as single target goes, it's not that difficult to hold single target. It shouldn't be, at least. Um, you essentially you have knee strike is your biggest generating skill, your finisher, knee strike. And then after that, there is overhand smash. You still want to use your AoE finishers, especially Mighty Upheaval, because of the increased threat that it causes. But if you're just holding one mob, one boss, or whatever, then your taunts plus those and how much damage you do, which, by the way, Brawler does more personal damage by quite a large amount than other tanking classes. Um, if you're just chaining setups and finishers, you should have no problem holding one or two mobs. Um, and so it's really not that difficult, but remember at the beginning about the variation of the types of finishers that you need to use to keep up your innate strength buffs. So you have to be judicious with which ones you choose. All right, moving along. So to get to the more interesting stuff, let's start with traits. This is going to be straightforward. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. There are a lot of different options with Blue Brawler for how to trait. Like, there are at least situationally 10 different viable trait lines. Like, I constantly respecking before I go into different instances and raids. But essentially, you're always going to want in blue all of this. Um Everything except for Rash Imitation attack speed debuff and Bracing Guard healing, even though that's not a bad trait, which I'll get into that whenever I cover Bracing Guard. I don't find that it's quite worth it. Then Retaliatory Intensity, even though it can be incredibly powerful when combined with, I'll just switch to my other trait build or trait line, which is what I use when I'm solo tanking a raid. um, so when combined with in Redline the trait Critical critical chance increase, plus 5% critical chance for skills, 5 points into it. But also, critical hits with finishers now generate 1 additional medal. That applies to all critical hits, including AoE crits. So that allows you to basically like maintain almost infinite medal in AoE situations, especially when you have 3 points into retaliatory intensity in blue, because whenever you get an evade, if you have 3 points into it, whenever you evade an attack, you get plus 27,000 crit for 30 seconds. So combine that with the plus 5% crit chance from red line, and also the amount of crit that you're going to have, which should be around 10 to 12% chance. Increase that by 27,000, add another 5%. You get the idea. You can hold aggro a lot more easily and maintain metal in AoE situations. However, you have to sacrifice other things in order to build into those. So this is the primary build that I use, at least for most tier 3 content, at least. All of that in blue with no retaliatory intensity. And then in red, no critical chance increase, because you just simply can't afford it. There's too much in blue and too much in yellow that's too important. I go with in red in order to get down to what you're really wanting in red line, is Joy of Battle damage. And so you have to put 10 points into the first 2 rows in order to get it. And your choices are plus 25% finisher or plus 25% setup damage. I choose finisher. Some people choose setup. It really doesn't make that big of a difference at the end of the day, except I find in AoE situations, finisher is the way to go. So, and then 5 points into might increase, and you definitely in every build should at least put 1 point into this, because 1 point gives you almost half the almost half the amount of might. 5 does over half, or half, yeah, basically half. 2390 for just 1 point. For 5 you get 4770. Okay. And if you put 5 points into that as well, then you can get Joy Battle damage, and that's one of the defensive skills that I'll be covering in a little while. That's what you want to get to in red, though. In yellow, there is a lot that you want. On the first row, as I mentioned toward the beginning, definitely always 5 points into battle-wise. Setup skills now have a 25% chance to generate 1 bonus medal. Definitely do that. And also, if you have the tracery, which you should, battle-wise medal chance here, and you have that it traded into that battle-wise trait, then that is increased by 16.5%. So that comes to 41.5% chance for setup skills to generate 3 medal instead of 2. So almost 2.5 on average. So that's a must-have. And then the vulnerability chance and duration, definitely should max out both. You want to get vulnerable up as quickly as possible on target and have it be on as long as possible, target/targets, so that you don't have to use low strike and you can use Sinister Cross or Dexterous Hook if you have excess metal and really want to do extra damage as your setup skill. You want to use Low Strike basically as little as possible, and you also want to get up vulnerable as quickly as possible. So yeah, definitely trade into both of those, as well as plus 5% evade chance, just duh. Um, then there's a tactical mitigation uh, trait that you can get up to at rank 5, 10.5k mitigation. So it's 2100 per rank, and like that's just a judgment call. Like I only trade into it whenever I'm going into tier 3 stuff. Obviously, I don't need as much mitigations at lower tiers, but it allows me to save some essence slots for other things. So, and then max targets, and then there is Strike as One, which is one of your most important abilities, and you want to definitely not only get it, but max it out with the Strike as One damage increase, and I'll be getting into that shortly as well. Then Death Feint, just for 1 point, it makes Quick Feint, which, if you recall, is your immediate metal generator. Go from 3 to 6, so why wouldn't you get that? Then there is what are called the share skills, and before I get into those, I'll just cover the last two here. I already talked about efficient strikes earlier. You can choose not to spec into that if you want to save that point for something else, but I find that sometimes it can be the difference between a wipe and not, so I like it. But there's this really, really powerful trait called Hasten Powerful Techniques, where setup attacks reduce the active cooldown of the following skills by 1 second, and this can't occur more than once every 2 seconds, but they reduce cooldowns of all of these skills by 1 second every 2 seconds. And these are like your most of your most important skills. Um, Weather blows, which I'll cover all these in a few minutes. Weather blows is your best defense. It's one of the best defensive skills in the game. Um, and, but it has a 1 minute 15-second cooldown and only lasts 15 seconds. However, with hasten techniques, you can get that down to 50 something seconds. As a cooldown. Then your most powerful group offensive buff, best defense, it also applies to. It has a cooldown of 2 minutes, but you can get that down to roughly a minute 20 if you are traded into haste and powerful techniques, obviously. Then the joy of battles, which are a little bit complicated. I'll get into them shortly, but they have cooldowns if you have proper traceries of 1 minute and 54 seconds, and they share a cooldown. You can only use one. Like once you use one, they both go on cooldown. Um, so you have to pick one, and I'll be covering like that in a few minutes. And then also plant feet, which is one of your other defensive abilities. You really don't have that many defensive skills compared to other tanks. Um, like you've got weather blows, and you've got an incredible group defensive skill, one for all, which if you're in a 6 or 12 person group, decreases the amount of damage that everybody takes for 30 seconds by 20%. It's one of the most powerful group defensive skills in the game. And you can also use it selfishly, but you've only got Weather Blows, Plant Feet, the Joy of Battles, and then your one thing that I forgot to mention about the taunts before is that both of them give a morale bubble when you use them. The AoE one gives about 1.5 times as much, but it's significant. Like I have right now, it's not morale based. So um, 70 the AoE taunt, when you use it, you get a for 20 seconds or until it goes away, a morale bubble of 71k, and then your single target 50k. So your taunts are also a huge source of mitigating damage. But that's it. And so, like, and none of those are that powerful on their own, except for Weather Blows. And if you don't have Metal Shield toggled on, and you don't have the force set and that allows you to heal yourself with it, then you really have to combine the others um, until you can get them back off of cooldown. And obviously, you want to be um, chaining your setups and finishers to do that as quickly as possible. But still, a lot of the time, um, brawlers will. Uh, I'm sure that if you've played with brawler tanks frequently, you notice that at least the more vocal ones will be calling out for heals more frequently than other tanking classes because we have like one powerful defensive skill, and then the others we've got to combine, and then we got nothing. you know, so like you really need to understand, especially as a healer, um, like when like what Weather Blows looks like, for instance, or have the brawler call out using Weather Blows, and then you can just basically ignore them for um, 15 seconds. But once that goes away, um, there's only one self heal, and it only restores 35% of max morale. Like one, you know, big self heal. And it also applies an incoming attack or an incoming healing buff rather, uh, as long as you're being attacked um, during its 15-second duration, which I'll cover in a little bit more detail shortly. Need to get to some other things. So that's pretty much it, along with the extra evade chance from using quick feint. And then like maybe the knockdown from Mighty Upheaval, stun from Helm Crusher, and like you've also got Follow Me, which is a run speed boost for the entire fellowship uh, within 15 meters of you. By the way, all of your big offensive and defensive group buffs are 15-meter range, and I'll be covering those next. But Follow Me, plus 20% run speed for 15 seconds. And also you've got a Knee Strike, which will decrease your target's run speed by 30% for the 15 seconds. And so you can Mighty Upheaval and Knee Strike, and then Hurl Object will decrease target's run speed by 30% for 8 seconds as well, and that's ranged. So you can kite kind of well. You can't kite like a guard, but you can kite, you know, better than most tanks. And often you have to, because you just don't have enough defensive cooldowns. And if you're not able to toggle Metal Shield, then you're gonna need to call out for heals. Like at times, when weather blows is up, you're not gonna need heals probably at all. Um, but once it goes down, then you're gonna gradually need some, and then for uh, uh, generally no longer than 10 seconds, but like 10 seconds per minute in fights where the tank is taking huge amounts of damage, you're going to need to be focus healed or be able to kite. Um, and obviously, in some fights, that's not an option. Okay, so I'll first cover the details of exactly what all of them do. So weather blows is your most important one. Um, and with the tracery, uh, it reduces all incoming damage when you have no metal down to 29% for 15 seconds. And when you have full metal, that's 20 seconds, or 20% rather, for 15 seconds. So you only take 20% damage for 15 seconds. Like it should always be like used by itself. Don't combine other defensive cooldowns with it, except for maybe having Metal Shield toggle on. But like that's your juggernaut, your last stand, your thickened hide. Um, and then after that, all of the others are a lot weaker. Um, there's Plant Feet, which has a really long cooldown. It is decreased by Hasten techniques, and it's also decreased by the 6-set bonus of the raid gear cooldown. But for 30 seconds, when you use it, as you see here, in a 5-meter square around me, as long as I stay in it, then I get this tearing up every 4 seconds, a mitigation to a buff to tier 5, which with the tracery for it increases both my mitigations by 6.375%. And you get 1 metal every 4 seconds too. Pretty underwhelming, especially considering you have to stand in that square in order for it to be effective. Then there is the joy of battles, and you can only use one or the other because, as I said, they should use one. They both go on cooldown. So you have to decide: is it more valuable for 15 seconds for you to get 20% less incoming damage, and in raid situations or like really difficult fights, normally joy of battle damage is the way to go, um, because 20% is a huge, decrease. But it secondary effect gains a stacking damage buff with every attack you make up to a maximum of 10 stacks. Is somewhat useful for threat generation, um, but it's really like it shouldn't factor into your decision of which one to choose. Um, Joy Battle Heal, I actually find in like I use this way more than I use Joy Battle Damage. I use Joy Battle Damage whenever I'm in a really, really difficult fight where I'm taking tons of damage and like the healer cannot, you know, focus on me. Uh, it's just, or I'm going to be getting like hit for, half my morale in one shot type thing. Then it's way more valuable. But Joy of Battle Heal is, I think, really underrated. With the trace free on every harmful skill, restore 4.7% of maximum morale with the cooldown of 0.5 seconds. So almost 10, you can restore just by using your attacks. Setup, finisher. Uh, Almost 9.4% of your maximum morale per second, 15 seconds. And especially in like AoE situations, that is going to be what you're going to go to most of the time. But those only last 15 seconds, and they have cooldowns of a minute 54. So those can be reduced by Hasten techniques, so you can get them down to like 1 minute 15 seconds or so. Still, you run into the similar problem as with the other defensive skills of them only lasting like 20% or so as far as the duration goes compared to their cooldowns. Then you've got Racing Guard, which is it immediately restores 35% of your maximum morale. And then it applies this really, actually, I'm going to go to an instance to demonstrate this. It applies a incoming healing buff as long as you are taking attacks. As long as you're taking attacks during the 15 seconds after you use it. And if you read the tooltip, it seems like after those 15 seconds, it would that would expire. But what actually happens is here. Okay, come hit me. All right, I'm using it. All right, so here we go. And every time that I get hit, it tears up to 10. Once it gets up to max, okay, now it refreshes the cooldown every time that it's hit after, every time you get hit after it's a tier 10. So it actually lasts up to 30 seconds as long as you're taking at least 10 hits during those 15 of a plus 10% base incoming healing modifier, which is pretty significant. So it's not just your your self heal. It's going to help you stay alive afterwards too. And especially in AoE situations. And that is why I mentioned that trading into Racing Guard healing, increasing the healing bonus value at 5 points, that 10% becomes 15%, and 30 seconds with it, yeah, to have plus 15% incoming healing for 30 seconds on a skill with a 1 minute 20-second cooldown is that extra 5% is worth considering trading into. Personally don't, but anyway. So that, along with your bubbles from your taunts and evade chance from quick feint, I suppose, and then your hiding abilities, and obviously metal shield. That's it as far as your defensive abilities go. So after that, I will now, even though you don't have the same defensive abilities as many other tanks, especially Guardian and Captain, if you're able to survive with what you do have, and if the group accommodates your playstyle, then you're able to provide these incredible offensive group buffs and debuffs for group damage. Strike is one, if properly traded and with the right tracery. If you're alone, then, and this is for 30 seconds if you're alone, and if you're with anyone, then the amount of damage differs. If you're alone, you get 18% more damage for 30 seconds, and in a group, the entire group raid gets 8% more for 30 seconds, and that only has a 1 minute cooldown, so you can keep that up half the time. Then there's the best defense, which and all of these only apply to fellowship members and raid members within 15 meters of you. So very important when you're playing with a brawler to stay close for many reasons. Uh, anyway, the best defense, plus 20% damage for 20 seconds to the entire raid or fellowship. Like, that's incredible, especially when you combine them. Um, and then you throw in vulnerable, so plus 3% incoming damage to the target/targets, as well as this incredible skill called Gut Punch, which has a 15-second cooldown. But when you use it on one enemy, it gives a debuff for 20 seconds of plus 10% incoming damage. And then it works very similarly. It's kind of like a minor Othes or Bothes in this way. After those 20 seconds are, um, after it's gone, then that same target can't, it's immune to have being, to getting the debuff again for another 70 seconds. So just like with Othes, Bothes, Crothes, um, for you have to wait a minute and a half to use it again on the same target. But the great thing about it is you can spread it because it only has a cooldown of 15 seconds, whereas those others, have 3 minute cooldowns roughly, or exactly. And this you can spread to multiple targets. And so combine all of that together, and you actually contribute about as much damage as a tank to the group, and at doing substantially more yourself than other tanking classes. Um, you contribute about as much as a having a red captain or blue mariner um, as the tank, if you obviously don't include their personal damage, as well as their Othes and Bothes. You basically do the same amount of group support offensively. Plus, you got One for All, which I mentioned before, uh, amazing, like, can absolutely save wipes for the entire group, makes things so much easier on the healers. Like, it's only really Guided by the Stars and Warding Knowledge are more powerful um, group defensive skills. Arguably Essay of Exaltation, but anyway. Um, so you've got all of that, and you will find that when you're playing with a brawler tank, on average, you'll be doing like 20% more DPS if they're, you know, if the group is properly coordinating and the brawler knows what they're doing than um, with other tanking classes. And of course that's a rough figure. It varies, but it's significant, incredibly significant. Um, so that's the trade-off. It's a lot harder to play than other tanking classes, excluding Warden. Um, but if you can, then like all of the best groups have brawler tanks. Really, there's just no reason as if you have a good one and everyone knows how to accommodate it, to bring anything else over it, in my opinion at least. All right, so let's get to something that I was saving, a little bit complicated of um, traits and skills. If you recall, when I was covering the yellow tree, um, the share skills, uh, uh, you remember at the beginning of the video when I showed the innate strength buffs, the tier, you can tier them up to 4 and you get mitigation um, percentage increases, parry chance, and damage done. Well, you can also share, you can trait into these 3 share skills that will allow you to, once you are at tier 4 of the particular one, give the entire fellowship or raid tier 3 of that particular benefit. So like the mitigations one is the most important by far, and this is another reason why these shared skills, especially the mitigation one, is why I firmly believe that Brawler is the best tanking option in the game, like just period. Uh, okay, so once you get once you get it tiered up and to 4, and then you can use this. And so let's see, it is there. Okay, so +2. Okay, so can use it and give everybody, for if you have the tracery that increases it, which I only use the one that increases the mitigations, but it gives everybody 2 +2 point something percent mitigation for 23 seconds, and that's really substantial. And then if you are especially if you are in a raid and you have a co-tank, you should definitely trade into the parry one, um, the which is actually what I just used there. But tier 4 of the parry chance gives you, without the tracery, +10%, and tier 3 will give them for 20 seconds. We'll give the entire rate 7.5% for 20 seconds parry chance, and your co-tank will especially appreciate that. And then if you want or need to, you can also trade into the share innate strength quickness, which, if you recall, the other innate strength buff was increased damage threat, 25% at tier 4. Well, this is, whenever you trade into this and use it, it gives it decreases the threat that everyone else does, and down to without the tracery, it's 88% of what they normally would do. But the uh, the the catch about this one is it also applies to your co-tank if you have a co-tank. So be very careful with trading into this and using it in raids. Um, like the you will upset your raid leader and co-tank very quickly if you use it at the wrong time, because you can't hold your responsibilities of aggro. So you add all of that up, um, and just the amount of group utility that you provide, as long as everyone can accommodate for your weaknesses as a brawler. Um, and as long as you can play it well, and which is much easier said than done, um, there simply is, in my mind, no argument to be made for any other tanking class as far as like the best to bring. To wrap up some things like essentials for when you're building um, stats. You have Brawler is the only class in the game that has no damage over time effects whatsoever. Um, so it needs the least amount of finesse, um, period. Because damage over time effects, even if you're a physical class, are tactical, and tactical abilities require more finesse in order to avoid being resisted than physical abilities require finesse in order to not be blocked, parried, or evaded, or partially blocked, parried, or evaded. So you need less finesse, substantially less, than other um, classes because you don't have any tactical abilities. As you see here, I've only got 31k, so you don't have to, like other tanking classes, in order to not have their, Bastion of Light and War Chant, for instance, be resisted, a variety of other, they have to, you know, amass similar finesse levels to DPS. Um, but you don't because you don't have to get above, even on tier 3, in order to avoid being completely blocked, parried, and evaded. Or you only need roughly 60,000 finesse. And if you put 3 points into the blue trait, Retaliatory Precision, when the brawler parries, gain a finesse buff. And that finesse buff is 30 seconds, and it's 32,000 finesse. So this makes stats as a brawler a little bit more complicated than other tanks because your parry matters a whole lot. Obviously, you want to but until you get a parry, you're going to um, get some get blocked, parried, and evaded some. So you want your parry chance to be pretty high, and that's why, unless I am going into if I'm solo tanking a raid, I will use the AoE um, target count word power, but otherwise I use parry chance. Um, and you probably want a few parry essences, but you don't need the finesse essences or wit or etc. that other tanks do. Um, however, like you need to make sure that you are facing the enemies, not just running through them. So turning and strafing as you're pulling things if you're on the move to get that a parry. And as soon as you do though, for 30 seconds you're good, and you don't have to invest hardly anything into finesse. Partial parries also apply. So even with just the parry chance word of power and 36,000 parry, combined partial and full chance is 16.1%. So it's going to happen pretty quickly, especially in AoE situations. Um, and then you don't have to worry about finesse. Your mitigations obviously um, are the same as other tanking classes, except Warden because they're medium armor. But you have sort of a unique situation in that you don't have an offhand or like shield or anything as a brawler. So you have fewer stats, like fewer sources to derive stats from. And that includes crit defense that most tanking classes get from shields, as well as block rating, vitality, etc. Um, so, in order to make up for not having that, I find that crit defense, and this is a very important note that very few people know. Um, Crit defense, you want to have somewhere between 20 and 30%. Um, that's where, like, that is how the vast majority of bosses and enemies in the game, like the multiplier on their crit caps out at being decreased. If you go over that, it doesn't help, except on a few bosses. So, like, you're going to want, because you don't have any natural sources of crit defense really. Um, like you don't get any from your primary stats, and you don't have a shield. Um, so you want probably to use the Umbari Word of Craft defense, both of the gold and teal, to get 8%. And then probably slot a few crit defense essences, or use, for instance, thick brass uh, bracelet, which has crit defense on it. You know, just geared with crit defense, um, and get it up to with somewhere around 25 to 30%. Um, that's very important for decreasing the amount of damage that you take from big hits. Um, and then uh, after that, basically the same things apply to you as other tanks. It comes down to, do you want to stack morale? And brawlers have huge amounts of morale because of well, a variety of reasons. We don't have to um, put essences into other things nearly as much. And so basically, do you want to continue stacking morale? And we also have traits that give, huge amounts. But what you should do with virtues is, like with all tanks, um, prioritize the ones that give morale and vitality. So honor, loyalty, fortitude, fidelity, and then you probably want to use compassion so that you don't have to slot many mitigation essences. But also justice and mercy are good options to um, to use as well if you want to go in that direction. Um, you don't have to worry about wit. You reach the point of the proper mitigation levels, which for tier 1 is 150k, tier 2 165, tier 3 180k, and that's buffed, of course. Then you don't need to push finesse as much, but you do need to push parry a little bit, as well as crit defense. And then you can choose between stacking either more parry um, and or evade, or supplemental vitality, or a combination of them. And I, because I'm now taking content that is, you know, high, very high tier raid content that where most of the damage cannot be block parried or evaded. Most of the most dangerous damage, that is. I'm now using primarily supplemental vitality build. But yeah, you have a lot of options. However, one last thing to note about stats is that might is actually more valuable to you than will by quite a bit. And it's with other tanking classes, there are a lot there's a lot more of an argument to be made for will. But as you see here, even though will does give 50% more of both mitigations, and it gives finesse, might gives parry and evade, and then mastery and crit, obviously. Lots of mastery. And because you're as a blue brawler, your threat is based on your damage more so than other classes, other tanking classes. You actually want to have pretty high mastery and crit. You actually want to do, you know, more damage as a tank than other classes have to consider. Um, so um, I highly recommend, like, I'll just screenshot allies real fast. Um, and yeah, almost finished. Um, I've got too much up on my screen. 1 second. Um, all right. So you're going to want to get that crit defense. That 8% is very hard to get from like just crit defense, the hard number, nearly as easily. Things you always want to have defensive posture on. Uh, Negative 10% incoming damage at the cost of negative 21k physical mastery. But like, I mean, I if you're just like farming landscape in tier 1, then forget it. But um, just always have that toggled on. And let's see, what I could cleanse. It only has a with the tracery a 7.5-second cooldown and removes up to removes 2. Um, and so you can cleanse yourself a lot better than most tanks. Um, and then you have a corruption removal that is very good as well. And not only does it do a good amount of damage, but it removes 1 tier of up to 3 different corruption effects from the target with only a 15-second cooldown, and it counts as a quick finisher. And then you have, this is one of the big weaknesses of Brawler that I hate. This is one of the things I hate most about the class in blue. Um, it's the only taking class that has a long interrupt. Um, you cannot, without sacrificing a whole lot of really valuable traits as well as traceries, get the cooldown for your interrupt skill down below 30 seconds. Um, but if you don't, so basically, like, that's another thing that the group needs to account for, is that normally you rely on the tank to be the first interrupt option on the primary target. Um, you can only do it once every 30 seconds. And this is your only immediate. Yep, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you learned something.